Welcome to Living Not So Fabulously. Back in our Denver basement days when we were manifesting a debt-free life, back when phones were still dumb and MySpace was social media,
Long time.
we had no idea how financial security could be a survival tool.
And today's guest, Vita Kari, is living proof, turning performance art, digital rebellion, and a splash of fad into resistance and rent.
Vita Kari is a Los Angeles-based multimedia artist, performer, and digital provocateur whose work transforms virality into vulnerability. Known for their surreal TikTok series, The Craziest Thing About Being Creative, Vita blends performance art with internet culture to explore themes of identity, accessibility, and queerness. From marrying their digital self to founding the queer community art space Vita Wood, they're redefining what it means to create and connect in the age of algorithms.
Let's get into how making art can pay the bills and shake the system. Welcome, Vita.
Yay.
We're so excited to talk with you. So you're an artist with a particular vision, but you also have to pay the bills. Can you give us a little insight into how you balance authenticity in your work while also, paying rent and buying groceries?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. Transparency in money is so important. And I think that one of the biggest things, and I think misconceptions about just the art world and that entire thing is that there are a million ways to find revenue streams and diversify them within the creative space, from galleries to, of course, social media, brand partnerships, and all of those things. There's definitely spaces to do that. And I think, of course, authenticity is a word that is thrown around all the time. And it's definitely something I lean into when sharing about like hearing loss, authenticity, my life as a queer person. And I think the more I share, the more I'm received, as well as making an exaggerated version of myself, make it campy. And that's something that I think gains a lot of affection as well.
Oh, I love that. So you've been quoted as saying that your craziest thing about being creative series is a form of fine art. How did that particular series impact your financial journey as an artist?
Yeah, absolutely changed the game. There's nothing like going viral to, change your financial game. The second you start going viral, it absolutely changes your financial situation. Brands start reaching out. You start to gain a revenue on not only do the platforms themselves start to pay you, although like it's different depending on the platform, but brands then want you to kind of, if you use their items authentically, they want you to like kind of integrate them or just do an ad. And doing that is one of the biggest ways that I personally like make a revenue, as well as selling my work in galleries. So going viral changed my life, period.
What is going, for those of us who are a little bit older and maybe are on Instagram or Facebook, not us in this room here, what does going viral even mean? Like, can you like, if I'm not on TikTok, if I'm not on Instagram, what does that even mean?
So for me, I have a background in fine art, and video art is something that I was really focused on. And the part of it that I was wanting to explore was, can I make these videos that have like a formal background? Can I somehow condense it into a 7-second, short video and put it on Instagram and TikTok and make it a series? And something that goes viral, we think of it as like millions of views. 30 million, 60 million, over 1 million. These kind of numbers are when you start reaching like virality, and true virality is like when you can do this consistently over years, right? And so that's, I think, when you start seeing the revenue that is, you can pay off debt, start helping out your family, that kind of thing.
I love that.
Yeah, that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask off of your one of your first comments. There was this idea of how virality and your art have been combined, but the financial impact, how has that enabled you to be the artist who you are today?
I think one of the biggest game changers is, it's a privilege, of course, to be able to focus on art. So many people in generations before me have like struggled. No one in any generation before mine has been able to focus on art. And that's the privilege of like being born in LA, growing up in the situation that I have. Like my grandparents are immigrants. My dad worked so hard. Of course, there was no opportunity to even consider maybe thinking about art. There was just no time for it, right? So even that in itself, that many don't have, today. Besides the fact that it was already like, such a privilege to explore it. Of course, I had like in undergrad, I had like been ready to maybe pursue like medicine, and things like that. Like I was potentially going to go in a different direction, but I really wanted to, hope that exploring art was like going to work out. So the biggest change that going viral is that I can invest in, my time into any project that I'm interested in. And some of the bounds of, is it going to make money, is loosened now, because it's kind of like, I'm going to try to, for example, I'm going to try to like break a Guinness Book of World Records as a performance piece in June for Pride Month. So those type of projects,
nice.
that never happened before, the idea of going viral, as well as I had opened a community art space before going viral in LA, and it was like for queer artists and more of a community environment. And it was so hard to keep the doors open. It was impossible because just, the infrastructure of those things are pretty hard to do without just like funding, and it was impossible. So if I was to do that now, it would be so much easier. And I hope to do more things like that in the future. So it just really changes the game of what you can explore, how you can live your life, and, paying off debt in the past. Yeah, it's just a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's oftentimes this perception of artist, right? Either you're a starving artist or you're, for lack of a better way of saying it, maybe a nepo baby, right? You have a family that has just funded your decision to be able to go off and explore art and do this. It's really very interesting to see someone who is able to do it themselves, because they have there are so many artists that wait. It takes them years and years and years to be able to get to the point where they're actually living a financially stable life, let alone being able to fund their own art. So it's so cool to be able to see you doing this.
Oh my gosh, well, I appreciate it, but it really does take a village. Like, there's so many people, and of course, like I really have like so many people have in my like just generations, right? For all of us have made huge sacrifices so we can all live our lives. And then not only that, I mean, I really do. And queer people in general, we all come from like a village that supports us. It does take a village for anybody to do anything cool. So there's a lot of inherent privilege and maybe nepotism in a different way. Or maybe not nepotism, whatever the word, love.
Just a support system.
Yeah.
So before we dive into Vita Wood, because we definitely want to talk about that, I think I just caught you saying you were going to go into medicine before choosing to go into art. Is that correct? And because those seem like they couldn't be more opposite career paths. So when did you decide to pivot toward art, and why?
I always was in fine art, like always. I started in undergrad as a fine art major, but I did do pre-med track, which means I did take all the prerequisites to go into med school, just because, my family really wanted me to have, it's going to be like, are you going to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer? What's up? Like, you don't want to make sure. A lot of people maybe understand that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of, especially immigrant parents, first generation, second generation kids are oftentimes expected to be the ones that all of a sudden are able to carry the family financially. And we hear this, right? You need to be a doctor, a lawyer. You need to have some sort of professional career, and then you shock your parents by saying you're going to go into art. They're like, oh, surprise, surprise.
But my parents are so proud of me, and my dad also. He had a professional career, and he knew what it takes, and he just wanted, my parents just wanted me to be, they wanted me to be good. But so they were concerned. But I love screenshotting a big check, sending it to my dad. He is very proud when that happens.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So you did give us a bit of a prelude into Vita Wood. For our listeners and viewers who aren't familiar, can you elaborate on what that is a little bit?
Yeah, it was a community art space that was basically available for artists to make music videos or to use for workshops, performances, whatever they basically wanted to do. Was have a sliding scale or free. And how we funded it was by putting it out for rent, because the whole thing was decorated. So it was decorated top to bottom with all like works of art that were at the time like mostly mine, like, so it's decorated top to bottom. And so the reason we decorated it like that was so it could be rented by like a big company. Like we had so many rented, like Savage X Fenty rented it, like just massive brands would rent it out. Rent for the whole space for like a month, and then we could just rent it out for free or give it for free to whoever wanted to like borrow it for a project. So it was available for artists in the community, but then basically the space was paid by somebody renting it out. And we did it through peer space. That's kind of how like we found the brands to rent it. And that was my first exposure in the brand space because that was before I was doing any videos online.
Wow, very, very cool. So our business personally has taken a bit of a hit because of Trump's anti-DEI efforts, with recent federal rollbacks on DEI initiatives leading to the cancellation of art programs, especially those that support LGBTQ plus folks and the BIPOC community. How has that shift impacted your ability to fund and sustain inclusive spaces like Vita Wood?
Oh my gosh. It's first of all, well, I closed the doors of that right when I started going to grad school. And like I've hoped to reopen something like that in the future. Although there's amazing spaces in LA doing incredible work that have definitely taken its space. So it feels okay to step away from that project. But the DEI effort, what? Yeah, of course it's taken a hit. I mean, we're seeing less brand deals right now for queer people in general. But it'll bounce back. It will. My girlfriend, though, she, has everything through the LGBT center, like all of her like HRT and everything is covered through that. And honestly, everything so far has been okay. So, besides all the passport stuff for trans communities, sorry, I'm not first, but it is crazy, and I'm shocked and disappointed.
All right, please hold that thought. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Living Not So Fabulously. We're here with Vita Kari. So, revisiting current topics, how is Trump's tariff seesaw affecting your business personally as an artist? Like, are your materials becoming more expensive? Are they harder to get? Or are you seeing any other collateral damage from his tariff seesaw?
I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is, the ebb and flow of brand partnerships as it happens. But actually, we're seeing Pride Month. Honestly, we're seeing a lot of reach outs for Pride Month right now. And maybe it's just because I'm in the bubble of, I grew up in LA and I do live in West Hollywood. Like my grandma lived in West Hollywood, so I don't know. But actually I'm having positive feelings about how that's gonna go. The biggest thing is I'm seeing the community rally together more, which is a wonderful thing. But I'm interested to see how the allocated ad spend towards content creators is gonna be for the rest of the year. In the art space, it's honestly feels somewhat the same, though time will tell. But on a personal level, I mean, yeah, the infrastructure of everything feels, devastating. But we have to stay positive.
So, it's pivoting just a little bit, your performance art often critiques consumerism and commodification. How do you reconcile earning a living through art that challenges those kinds of systems? Can the two really go hand in hand?
Yes. So, I mean, first of all, performance art makes no money. Like, period. I go under every time you see a performance piece. Like, I'm going under for it for sure, like thousands of dollars at times. The way that we fund those type of projects is through pieces selling and like wall works generally. So I make tapestry wall works, and then of course like things in the content creator space. But performance pieces are so important, I think, because that's where the real conversations are driven and where they really are given space to live. And I think that it's interesting too, because even my wall works, right, are somewhat of like a critique of how the rug is pushed across different like communities and how many times it's been replicated and lost. And then of course I'm selling it on a wall. And I think that that's an interesting thing about like the art world and exploring that space, is that there are a lot of times where things overlap and there's a lot of conversations to hold within there when you're in an art market. And it's part of what I like. I mean, it's a conversation that's growing and we're all exploring it together, and something that, I'm enjoying as I'm exploring it for sure. But when it comes to performance, yeah, there's no money there for sure.
Interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this up. At the very beginning, you alluded to this idea that there are lots of income streams that folks can tap into as artists. And what you just kind of laid out here is this idea that maybe your performance art is your loss leader. Like we think, we go to a grocery store and we see something that's on sale and we're like, how the heck can it be that cheap? Well, we know that it's that cheap because this item over here is helping to fund that. And I appreciate that you say that this is a piece of your business that that brings the conversation, that can bring the attention, that can draw people in, and then they get to see the whole you and the other stuff that you bring to the table as an artist.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's definitely a way to do performance art that could be funded, or, it could have more of I suppose, a draw for a more something that could definitely get grants and things like that. There are so many grants in the art world. First of all, Creative Capital is a great resource for a bazillion grants that anyone can apply to at any time. That's an amazing way to fund an art idea. But for me, I prefer to just self-fund a performance piece because there's less pressure of what it has to be, what if something goes wrong. And also I prefer to do it outside of a branded space because it just feels like there you're kind of able to speak. They're just able to do whatever you'd like to do in that moment. So I prefer to
Nobody telling you what to do.
in a way, yeah, because also too, it's just so unexpected. You're in public, anything could happen. So you don't want to misrepresent anybody's brand, of course. And when it comes to grants and those type of financing spaces, I would love to do a public project or something like that. But I think it would be for different, maybe for something different than a performance piece, because performance pieces are really the Wild West for sure, especially when you're doing it in public. I mean, inside the gallery space is one thing, but a public performance piece, like the ones I've done in the past, like I was trapped in a can outside of, in Miami, like Art Basel, like that, out on the street, people were throwing cans everywhere. Those type of performances are so volatile and interesting, and you really see all of human nature expressed. And those type of things I feel like are best when left open.
Yeah, I love that. That's I just had no idea that performance art would be a loss leader.
Yeah.
It's just so that's insight for me. So pivoting a little bit again, you've utilized platforms like TikTok to share your art. How has monetizing your digital content influenced your financial stability and your artistic direction? And how would that be impacted if something like TikTok were banned in the United States?
I think we're already kind of seeing the shift of less digital ad spend on TikTok already. So it's kind of like we've been weaned off that. And I think it just pushes, us as creators to find other ways or more, time on other platforms or just diversifying content, which is honestly been good, I think. As well as it's definitely taught me a lot about budgeting. I've made a lot of
Really?
financial for sure. Oh my gosh. I have no idea.
Do tell.
I've been in the trenches for sure. I mean, me and my girlfriend, we've been together it'll be 6 years this year, right? So that's through COVID. That's through a lot of tough times, and then to come into, the TikTok era where brand deals are so, generous. And then, you're able to pay off debt. You're able to take everyone out to dinner. And then, then there's less ad spend. So now you're like, oh my gosh, how am I like month to month? But like we're here, and then now you're like back and you're now paying for projects. You're more responsible. You're going to do it right this time. Yeah, it's
I love that.
Yeah. Do you mind? I want to ask you just one question here, to kind of square this idea of speaking out about consumerism and the consumer culture that we have, but at the same time being an artist that makes a living off of corporations that tap into that consumerism culture, that capitalism. How do we square this? How do we say, okay, I am against capitalism, I'm against consumer culture, but I'm also taking a paycheck from Google or Coca-Cola or companies like that? What kind of conversation do we have in our heads that allow us to do stuff like that?
No, it's interesting because for my craziest thing about being creative series, a lot of it is, interrupting the doom scroll was really important. Kind of critiquing how much time we're doom scrolling, and then it wakes us up out of it. That was a big part because the pieces are printed out in those videos. So, like the video will come on the screen, and then maybe the text will just be like actually printed out, and that wakes people up, hopefully, or it gives you a moment of pause as you're on the screen for like 3 hours. At least for me, that was my intention because I spend so much time on the screen. And after I was posting it, what was initially a critique of these, ultimately like super apps and things like that. Of course, they, reach out, they want to work with me. And recently, like Meta, I've been working with them on like some accessibility features because I'm hard of hearing. I have like lowercase d deaf and hard of hearing deaf, so I wear hearing aids. So what it is like, although it was originally started out as more of kind of like a critique or something cheeky, now I kind of get the opportunity to make kind of meaningful change that matters, especially to like my community. Yeah, like accessibility, so special. So in some ways, when it comes to the ability in my work, especially, right? It's like I'm talking about whether it's like my wall works, which are kind of a critique on like how rugs have been consumed and then spat out, or in these performances, and then ultimately in other ways, I'm like funding my life from my work, and it's supposed to critique, these like massive, you know, capitalist institutions. But then, of course, I'm like part of being a cog, right? I think all of it goes back to like it takes privilege to dismantle privilege, which is definitely both my girlfriend Abby on XLC, and it's just really important to stay focused that we are kind of all working within it, no matter what. And the best we can do is just to, ultimately, we're queer people, we're, people with accessibility needs, we're, showing up in the world. And just by doing that and hopefully like trying to do what we can, that, art, which is the way to communicate, our ideas into the world the best way we can. And that's how I explain it.
I love that. Vita, thank you so much for coming on our show today. We really appreciate it. David, what's your takeaway?
Well, I think I really loved your last explanation here of this idea of changing the system within the system. Because we all live within this system. It's really difficult for us to remove ourselves from the system completely, but there are ways that we can change the system from within. And I think that's a responsibility that all of us have when we want the system to change.
Yeah, my takeaway is I think you're such a great example of being able to be creative, and not just as an artist, but as a business owner, being able to create different income streams so that you're not solely reliant necessarily on TikTok, should it get banned. And you're able to have some of your income streams subsidize your passion projects, like being a performance artist. I had no idea that that was a loss leader for you, but you're able to clearly to make money in other areas of your business to be able to make that amazing performance art that you're known for. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of Living Not So Fabulously. If you like what you see, scan the QR code to follow Yahoo Finance Podcast for more videos and expert insight. Because if you do, performance art will remain weird, queer, and get better funded. And until next time, stay fabulous.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.